Hello Reapers, my name's Seth and we are back again for some more Trove to Drove. Today we're going to be talking about something very interesting. I want to give a shout out to my man Jacob, who actually ended up sending me an email telling me that him and his friend ended up finding some type of a way that you could make the Neon Ninja viable in Shadow Towers again. Honestly speaking, I didn't really end up hearing back before I recorded this video anyways what their method was, but it piqued my interest enough that I ended up experimenting with a couple things with my good pal Nintendo Gamer, and we ended up finding out some pretty cool results. Now, first of all, the results of both Jacob and his friend was something to do with you could end up throwing down pinatas and using that to actually generate your shurikens in Shadow Towers, right? And then further than that, Joe and I immediately thought, well, what about just using the ball things that you can end up throwing around in the environment? Outside of the fact that they bounce around all over the place, you can craft them for 1 glim a pop at the Fun Factory right over here, and ultimately, you could end up throwing one down, build up your shuriken, throw one down, build up your shuriken, over and over and over again, and rinse and repeat until you end up having 3 rings around your character, right? Which seems a little bit more cost-effective than actually throwing down pinatas. Now, while I'm not exactly sure what Jacob and his friend's method was going to end up being, it was something to do with the pirate captain or whatever, I don't know. Joe and I kind of experimented and went through all the different characters that end up throwing down turrets or throwing down anything that you can end up kind of interacting with, right? And it turns out that the only one that you can actually interact with within Neon Ninja is the Draco's Bomb. So before we get into it, I just want to mention that for those that don't know, Cursed Skulls are in Shadow Towers, right? They're also in normal dungeons and stuff like that. What used to happen in older versions of Trove before the Eclipse update was when you would attack the Cursed Skull, it would spawn all the enemies around, and the Cursed Skull object would still remain there. It would be a static object that the Neon Ninja could keep attacking and actually build up a combo meter in order to actually throw his shurikens, right? So now, since the Eclipse update, that Cursed Skull ends up going invisible. The reason that they ended up making this change was because the majority of characters, aka ranged characters, were actually having their projectiles stopped by the Cursed Skulls. So now they could actually just shoot through it while there is a transparent Cursed Skull sitting there. It's not going to end up stopping projectiles, but simultaneously made the Neon Ninja pretty much useless in Shadow Towers, because without being able to build up your shuriken without taking damage, the Neon Ninja just dies like in one hit by absolutely everything. So what you can potentially do, this is where me and Joe ended up just trying out in 2 seconds flat after I ended up receiving that first email from Jacob. I thought, okay, that's interesting, let's mess with this. You can actually build up your shuriken off of the Draco bombs. If Psycho whatever is going to end up actually attacking these, that would be very helpful, dude, because if I try to swap off of my Draco, it's going to end up actually just deleting the bombs that are in front of me. So this is kind of a way that you can use the Neon Ninja in Shadow Towers. You can actually use him very effectively in Shadow Towers. However, it does mean that you have to actually sacrifice a slot in your Shadow Tower for somebody who's going to remain the Draco, just to be dedicated to following the Neon Ninja around and actually helping him out by throwing down bombs. Now, I think that that's pretty cool in that Trove doesn't really have any support classes whatsoever. They like to pretend that there's support classes in this game, but there isn't really. There's no characters that synergize as they would in any other video game in existence, right? But now we've kind of accidentally discovered a way that the Neon Ninja and Draco can kind of have a very nice kinship, just so that the Neon Ninja is actually usable in Shadow Towers. Now, the reason you might want to actually use this, those of you that are at the end game, you're just gonna walk right over this and just think, why? Why would I do this? I'm already doing enough damage. But for those of you that don't actually do enough damage in the Shadow Towers, you're going to want to use this method just for the simple fact that you're going to be able to have not only the Neon Ninja's damage back into the game, but you're also going to be able to have the shurikens and the snaring, more importantly, back into the game, because as you end up throwing your 3-starred shuriken through all of the enemies, it's going to get them in a snare, so it's going to lock them in place. This also does work on Shadow Titan bosses as well. So with keeping that in mind, you're going to want to be able to keep at least 1 Neon Ninja and 1 Draco anywhere on the map that you need them to be, so that you can actually bundle all the enemies together. Maybe you got a candy barb to pull them all in. That's another way that you could do this very well, is you get a candy barb to pull them all in, then you get the Neon Ninja to throw a shuriken, and then the candy barb can just go off and do whatever else he wants, even swap to another damage character instead. But the whole point is that now, so long as the shurikens keep up, the shurikens can stack. They're one of the only snaring objects in the entire game that stack, keeping an enemy stuck in place. Because otherwise, we've got plenty of other abilities that don't actually do that, and the Neon Ninjas can. So it's really cool and very, very viable. So keep that in mind. And further than that, like I said, it works for the Shadow Titan bosses. Now, Dreadnought in particular is where this becomes very useful, because you can actually lure the boss over to another side of the map, and now the Neon Ninja can actually keep it stun locked rather than having to run all the way up to it and tag it with your sword to bring up your shurikens. Now you can just move wherever the Draco wants, wherever the Draco is going, right? And further than that, it means that Pinata God is also something that used to actually be soloable with the Neon Ninja. The Draco on Ultra is very difficult, even for endgame players, just because of the fact that he summons so many minions that it does enough damage to you that you end up dying just before the boss ends up getting finished. Like, I can't solo Ultra Pinata on my Gunslinger unless I get really lucky and just so happen to dodge most of his minions' attacks, right? But the Neon Ninja was actually able to single-handedly solo Pinata because of the fact that you would activate the Cursed Skull, run into a corner, dash through Pinata God to get him snared, and then you would build up your shurikens over on the Cursed Skulls, throw your shuriken over to him, and then if you were lucky, he would end up spawning his minions close enough that you would be able to snare all of them as well. So essentially you were across the map, or halfway across the map, I guess, and you were able to kill Pinata God without him or any of his minions even being able to lift a finger. That's why the Neon Ninja was a force to be reckoned with in Shadow Towers. Not only that, but also because of the fact that his shuriken's damage scales astronomically. So he's always like been a very powerful character, just because with very little amount of stats, you end up doing almost quad damage compared to a lot of the other classes in the game. Like, that's one of the reasons why originally I ended up swapping from the Shadow Hunter and maining the Neon Ninja, was not only because of the efficiency of grinding in U9 because of the Neon Ninja Rage Speed build, but also just because in Shadow Towers, I was comparing the numbers of the exact same stats. Like, I swapped my gems over. I didn't use any gem calculators or anything like that because I find them to be very unreliable. I just swapped my gems over from my Shadow Hunter to my Neon Ninja, and I was just doing 2-3 times as much damage. And that was a long time ago. So I'm just trying to get a point across that the Neon Ninja is still a very powerful character. The reason he became useless in Shadow Towers was only because of this minor change that they ended up doing to the Cursed Skulls. And it's awesome that it's back, that you can actually bring the Neon Ninja back into Shadow Towers. Now, granted, you have to have somebody that's going to end up sacrificing themselves and taking one for the team and actually being a Draco. And again, as far as endgame is concerned, like for me, for example, I've got a strong enough crew. I can pretty much go through all of Ultra Shadow Towers so long as I have a second person with me. Usually I just take Merc and we can actually duo all of Ultra. Technically speaking, you can solo a lot of Ultra, but most of all, you need to actually use the Dino Tamer for that instead of the Gunslinger, because the Gunslinger doesn't really have that much movement. But now I'm just getting off topic here. The Neon Ninja being able to snare things is going to end up making Shadow Towers a whole lot easier for most people. And I wanted to talk about this because I didn't actually mention it in the more recent tutorials that I put out, kind of talking about like the other characters, and even more recently put out a video that was single-handedly talking about why the melee characters ended up becoming very useless in Shadow Towers. And while a lot of the melee characters are still useless in Shadow Towers, I'm very happy to report that this method does work for the Neon Ninja, so technically we can actually bring him back. It's not ideal, you know, nothing's really ever going to end up replacing the Cursed Skull method, but it's still nice that we can actually bring this character back front and center. Well, not necessarily front and center, kind of off to the side, back to the Shadow Towers, right? In either case, though, I didn't even think about making a video like this until after I ended up putting out my recent tutorials, and then I was like, oh, wait a minute, this works. So in any case, thank you so much for watching, folks. Very much appreciate it. Don't forget to like, share, favorite, and subscribe for more daily content. That's also going to build up loyalty points to my merch store. Links are in the description for that. And for the fans that want to go the extra mile, you can donate to me for absolutely free with Gawkbox. Check links in the description explaining more about that as well. Sign on and stay epic, everybody. Seriously, I don't know whether or not I'm annoyed or just like admiring the fact that he's been running around us in circles this entire video. Like, is there something wrong with him or is there something right with him?